Hey Curly T's, welcome to the Curly T Chat.
These children are being taught to accept uncritically whatever they're told.
I'm glad you're all here.
Be informed.
All the civilizations that existed last week still exist. We have some serious things to talk about. Now, I have tried to stay out, O-U-T, of politics because people tend to take out their feelings about your personal opinion on your business. Like, their displeasure with your opinion is often taken out on your business or whatever you're trying to do online. So I've just been trying to not really get into the politics of this.
Communities which concentrate decision-making in a few hands rate low on a power scale and are moving towards despotism.
We are not sponsored, okay? There are no billionaires backing curlyt.com, right? So on this particular issue, in a sense, it seems to be in everybody's minds, in everybody's discussions, everybody's words, death about the future of this country. I just have a few things that I wanted to say about the situation. You can agree, you cannot agree, that's fine. You don't have to agree with everything I'm saying. That's fine. That's what adults do. But there are some things I just have to get off my chest because the United States seems to be spiraling under the current leadership. Under Trump's thumb, the United States seems to be disintegrating. It seems to be decaying. Now, to pull back from all of this, it irritates me that everybody seems to be at each other's throats over the future of that place. That place. You know what I mean when I say that place. Some people believe in the Bible's predictions about that place and what allegedly belongs to them or was promised to them thousands and thousands of years ago, despite who's on the land now and what type of disruption and chaos that would cause. But not everybody believes that. Not everybody believes that. Not everybody is going to take your word for it because there is no external objective thing that says this land belongs to these people. We're going by what they're saying. Everybody's going by what the interpretation is in the Bible or what's been written in the Bible that has had X numbers of people's hands on it before we even got to it. Who even knows what the original intent was, what the original words were, what the original thing said? We have no idea. No idea, none. No idea. We have no idea what the original situation was before that was written. Whenever it was written. And when I say that, I'm not critiquing your religion. Get out of your feelings. This is not personal. Not every critique of that place is an anti-Semitic tirade. We are talking here. We are analyzing here. People are starting to ask questions that they've never asked before. And that's partly because of the actions of the person who's currently in control of that place. The person who has been holding on to power for a very long time. And there are people that want him gone from that position of power, and they have been up to this point unsuccessful. But the displacement of an entire population, the bombing of schools and hospitals, and people blown to regular people, not anybody who's fighting anybody for any reason, blown to smithereens, people who are desperately trying to survive on Earth. All of that has a consequence, and the consequence is people are starting to ask questions. Wait a minute, what happens to the current situation? What happens to what's going on right now as you walk down the path on this journey to create some land that was promised to you allegedly thousands of years ago? What happens to the people that are currently in your way? Do you get to wipe them off the face of the earth without consequence because of what's written in some book from 2,000 years ago, from however many thousands of years ago? And if you are a person currently trying to hold on to your moral values in the face of this, are you complicit when you do nothing while babies are being wiped out? While kids' schools are being bombed to smithereens? Like, are you complicit? These are questions that people are asking, and they should be asking. Because what's happening right now is it just seems like everything is all chaotic. Everything became chaotic all at once. It seems that way. But, these things have been happening. You just haven't cared because it seems as if every president before Trump was smart enough not to get involved in attacking Iran. But because this man was not smart enough for that, because this man's narcissism should be studied in college courses, because this man thinks he knows everything. We are now suffering through, and our eyes are being opened to things that we have been able to ignore for a long time. It just feels like things need to change. So there is a distinct possibility that we could be arguing over something that never occurred or didn't happen the way that they said it happened. You got to make room for that possibility. Again, this ain't personal. Get out of your feelings. We don't have to agree. That's fine. You can continue to believe exactly what you are believing today. But don't take my word for it. They haven't found any evidence that this whole scenario existed. They're still looking. As this man says from a clip from this YouTube channel. The video is titled A History of Biblical Israel, number 1, the Patriarchs. Listen to what he says about this.
So much for the biblical story. How much of this can we believe, and how much has been corroborated by archaeology or other sources? The answer in a nutshell is simple. Almost none. We have the biblical narrative and pretty much nothing else. So it may be a matter of faith to believe that the Exodus and everything else took place as the Bible describes it.
At this point in time, in 2016, they had no evidence that Abraham and the patriarchs even existed. They have no evidence. They've never had. Listen, all of this is based on what was written in this book that was compiled by a bunch of men. You heard what this man just said. They have no evidence. Now, he later tries to clean it up to try to give people hope. But as of now, they have no evidence.
That's not to say that they did not. As we frequently say in archaeology, absence of evidence does not mean evidence of absence. Just because we haven't found them yet doesn't mean that we will not someday, and we can remain hopeful.
It also doesn't mean that you will someday. This is what this back and forth is about. Somebody says something happened. There's no evidence of it happening. And then when you say there's no evidence of it happening, somebody else comes back like this man and says, well, just because you have no evidence, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Well, that's true. But that also doesn't necessarily mean that it happened and you're just waiting on the evidence to fall into your lap. I'm not saying that it was created. I'm saying that there's no evidence that any of this existed right now, and that people who are trained to look for this stuff can't find it. They're making inferences, they're making assumptions, they're drawing from this, they're using their analytical skills to come up with possible scenarios. That's fine. But in the meantime, real live people are being displaced, they are being murked, they are being taken off the face of the earth, they're being moved en masse to different parts of the world, because that book says that place should have all of Iran, all of Iraq, most of Saudi Arabia. Like, what in the world? I think there's a more profound question that needs to be asked here. Are you willing to wreck and ruin real live human beings that exist right now because of what somebody wrote in a piece of, I don't want to say fiction. It's not nonfiction because they can't prove everything yet. So what is it? Somebody wrote in a book thousands of years ago that this belongs here and that belongs there. And instead of just letting it happen naturally, you've decided that you're going to make it happen. How do you know it was supposed to happen now and not another 1,000 years from now? Another 100 years from now? You couldn't have waited? I mean, I'm stunned because we're having arguments over things that people believe and not arguments over what's what and why things exist the way they are. You know, we're not arguing over the importance of gravity and how one object coming into connection with another affects another object. We're not arguing, in other words, we're not arguing science. We're arguing something that may or may not have been true to begin with. And because of that, real live people in modern day times, in present times, are being displaced, thrown into chaos, or wiped off the face of the earth. And everybody's just supposed to shut up or be accused of anti-Semitism because these questions were not asked long before now in a serious way. Not really. I've never seen so many people so up and out in my real life, my everyday life, my everyday walking around. I've never seen so many people this openly despondent, angry, confused, ticked off about everything that is happening and has happened. Yes, under the Democrats too, under a Democratic president, this genocide in that place started. That place started a genocide under a Democratic president. Whether you want to believe that or accept that or not, you better understand what's true and what's not, or else we will have to continue to all learn these lessons. Get it together. This genocide right here, right now, this one started under a Democratic president, and everybody just sort of looked the other way and said, oh, well, you're anti-Semitic if you think that this shouldn't be happening. And I'm like, when you pull back on the situation, what if this were going to happen anyway? It was going to happen naturally and gradually, and it was going to happen in its own time. But this person who is in control of that place right now decided that he wanted to hold on to power. And so he was going to use the history of the Bible to hold on to his power. What if that's what we're dealing with and not anything biblical, anything related to the history of this earth? It's just one person or one group of people wanting to hold on to power indefinitely, and they're using people's religion, people's faith, people's belief in a higher power. They're using that to stay in power. What if we're all fighting and genocides is being committed and people are being wiped off the face of the earth because one group of people wanted to stay in power? And I specifically say one group of people because there are Jewish people in Iran who are the victims of that place right now. Oh yeah, that place has bombed synagogues in Iran. And we just supposed to be like, okay with that? Looking the other way, oh, I guess that's the way it is because that's what the Bible said. The Bible said that place was gonna bomb Jewish people in Persia, in Iran. That's what it said? I don't think so. Like, what is the macro of this? We're all being shell-shocked by all of the details that's coming out about the ineptitude of the Trump administration and that man trying to hold on to power over that place and doing all types of wild stuff and making all types of reckless, ridiculous decisions. But what the macro is, once you pull out of this, maybe this is all about somebody trying to hold on to power and that's it. And they're using your faith and your love of God, your love of the Heavenly Father. They're using that to their benefit. I'm disgusted. Now, I wasn't going to be concerning myself with any of this publicly until I read this post from our president, even though I didn't vote for him. He is a representative of the United States in the world. This man had the audacity, the unmitigated gall, to post this in public. Quote,
"A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will.
A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will."
This man, who is facing all types of criticisms, rightly so, for a lot of the nonsense that he's doing domestically in the United States, had the unmitigated gall to threaten the existence of an entire civilization in the name of the United States, because he's using the United States military and the protection that provides to protect him from this. This is what makes him bold, because he has the power, or he thinks he does. This is what makes him bold enough to try this and to say this and to make all of the United States look absolutely ridiculous to the rest of the world. A whole civilization will die tonight? Are you nuts? Is it opioids? Is it what is it? And I think this was like the last straw for a lot of people. You see, I'm on here right now talking about this right now, where you haven't heard me say anything about this administration before now. This was sort of the last straw for a lot of people. And it's extremely dangerous, because not only does it put Americans at risk who are abroad all over the world, it sets up another 2 decades at least of possible terror attacks all over the place. Like, what are you doing? You've already, so much blood has been shed already that we're going to have to be, as a nation, we're going to have to be looking over our shoulders for the next 2 decades for people that saw their sisters, their cousins, their uncles, their brothers, their mothers and fathers blown to smithereens. And we're going to have to deal with that fear, because there are certain things that you cannot apologize for. You can't come back from. Like, once you have blown up a school full of Once you have blown up a school full of children, you can't come back from that. You can't apologize for that. You just better hope that the relatives of those human beings don't want revenge. You just better hope that they are more merciful than you ever were to their family members. Let me continue with this fool. He goes on.
However, now that we have complete and total regime change,
First of all, this is a man that talked about it being the stupidest thing in the world to go out and do regime change wars. This is that same person who, when he was running for president, didn't like anything that was going on with Iraq. He talked about Jeb Bush's brother, George W., like a dog at that debate.
The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But you
do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right.
Anyway,
however, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail,
lie.
Maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows?
Listen, this is irritating me. Just reading this again is irritating me. First of all, you don't understand the nature of what's going on in Iran right now if you think the person that is in charge is less radical, less radicalized minds prevail. Y'all are murking the people who would be less radical. You've wiped all of them out, or most of them, according to reports. You've wiped out most of the people that would be more likely to come to some type of agreement with you. And I think there is some truth to that based on where we are right now. Iran ain't playing with us no more. Iran is not playing with us on no type of level. You see all these Lego videos that they're coming out with? They're using AI and social media in such a way that I don't think the United States was prepared for this. I don't think they were prepared in any way for what they have created, for the response from Iran. I think they truly thought that this was going to be like Iraq. They were going to walk in, they were going to decimate, and everything was going to be in chaos, and they were going to come in and be the rulers of the region. No, none of that is happening. None of that is happening. And I will bet any type of money. I'm not a betting woman because, baby, I ain't got it like that. But I think people told the higher ups that this was a possibility, that they needed to prepare for something awful like this possibly happening. And they just didn't. They just didn't believe it. It's like, who was that? Shinseki saying that they needed hundreds of thousands of troops in Iraq. And everybody sort of, shunned him, pushed him aside, ignored him, talking about, you don't know what you're saying. He doesn't understand what we're trying to do, blah, 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 blah. And it turns out he may have been underestimating the numbers. Okay, I remember all of that. I'm old enough to remember all of that. And then you have him surrounded by some of the most incompetent know-nothings I have ever seen. I mean, this seems worse than George W. Bush, if I'm being honest. According to the International Business Times in the UK, from a report by Catherine Martin, posted on April 9th, 2026, this article's title is Pete Hegseth and Pentagon Caught Lying as Army Survivors Say Unit Was Unprepared During Iran's Attack in Kuwait. Lying. That's the word that they used here. Soldiers challenge Pete Hegseth's account of deadly Kuwait drone strike. Let's read. A lot of people don't click on articles. So we're going to go through some of this and then you can read the rest at the website. But let's read some of this. For those who stood in the path of Iran's deadliest drone strike in Kuwait, the official version of events offered by the Department of War feels less like a report and more like a rewrite. While the administration paints a picture of a well-defended position hit by a statistical anomaly, the men on the ground describe a scene of systemic failure and avoidable vulnerability. According to the army soldiers who survived Iran's deadliest attack, they were unprepared and were in a vulnerable position. Now they're really going after these people. In a candid interview with CBS News, Army survivors of the strike have stepped forward to dismantle the official narrative regarding the facility's readiness. These soldiers, many still recovering from significant injuries, argued that the base was far from secure. Let's read that again. These soldiers argued that the base was far from the secure stronghold described by leadership. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth previously described the drone as a squirter. First of all, don't use that. What did you call it that for? Anyway, he also claimed that it made a devastating impact because it was too strong despite the soldiers being in a fortified unit. The Army survivors, however, did not think Hegseth's words were accurate. They contend that the lack of adequate air defense systems left them as sitting ducks during the Iran offensive. Quote, painting a picture that one squeaked through is a falsehood, one of the injured soldiers said. I want people to know the unit was unprepared to provide any defense for itself. It was not a fortified position. I'm stunned. I'm stunned. What you mean you had soldiers in this place and it wasn't a fortified place? What? Another service member also said that it was chaos because there was no single line of patients to triage, adding, you're on one side of the fire or you're on the other side of the fire. Following the attack, the injured soldiers were left to care for themselves with improvised bandages, braces, and tourniquets. This testimony suggests that the casualties were not merely the result of a powerful weapon, but the consequences of a unit left exposed. Like, y'all really had these soldiers out there on their own. I guess you were hoping that they would figure it out somehow, while y'all out here making all these wild decisions, putting their lives at risk. For these service members, the decision to speak out is not about political sabotage, but about preventing future loss of life. So they're telling you, they need to tell you what happened because clearly the United States government is not. They're covering our eyes. They're lying to us about what's actually happening. Let's continue. They argued that ignoring the tactical failures of the Kuwait strike ensures that the same errors will be repeated in future engagements. There is a sense that the truth has been sacrificed to maintain the appearance of military competence. What they're saying is they're lying to you because they don't want you to know. Well, they don't want us to know. The Secretary of Defense is not telling us everything because he doesn't want us to know that they really don't know what they're doing. And they have endangered the lives of troops all over this world. One soldier said, quote, it's not my intent to diminish morale or to disparage the Army or the Department of War more holistically. But I do think that telling the truth is important, and we're not going to learn from these mistakes if we pretend that these mistakes didn't happen. Say that again. Just a tiny bit more from this article. When asked if the attack was preventable, the soldier said absolutely yes. Was this a preventable attack? The soldier said absolutely. 6 soldiers died from the attack and over 20 were left injured. The call for honesty directly challenges the Pentagon's account, which sought to frame the event as an unavoidable tragedy rather than a failure of preparation. 6 soldiers are no longer on this earth, and 20 more were injured that we know of, because those numbers may not be accurate, because they're out here making wild decisions, leaving the people who actually have to execute these plans unprepared. Disgust is not a strong enough word. I mean, people are hair on fire upset. And it started for me with this entire thing about Trump is somehow going to do something that George W. couldn't, that other people who do regime change couldn't. It never made any sense. We've already seen the results. We were in Afghanistan for 2 decades, or however long we was in it. I mean, some ridiculously long amount of time. We were in Vietnam way too long. We were in all of these places where the intentions were trash. It seems to be not working out the way that we wanted. I don't think that's a coincidence. Let's continue with the criticisms. This one comes from The Guardian, written by Margaret Sullivan, who says Pete Hegseth is a disaster of a defense secretary, and it's no surprise. The former Fox host has misled the public, she writes. He has prayed for violence and clashed with the press. This is not a serious military leader, according to Margaret Sullivan at The Guardian. She says, as the defense secretary, the Secretary of War, he is disastrous. 100% agree. 100% agree. He is disastrous. But he has a disastrous boss, the person that has put him in power, who thinks he knows everything, who is arrogant to a fault, whose ego has allowed so many awful people to usurp his power and use it to their ends, and he thinks he knows everything. You can't tell him what he doesn't know because he thinks he knows everything. You can't argue with someone like that because they will always call you stupid. They will always figure out how you're the problem. They will always not care what you have to say, and they will lurch further into madness because they think they know everything and they think everybody else is stupid. Let's continue with this article. His most consequential test, America's misguided war with Iran, has proven that beyond legitimate argument. But for those who watched him for years as a right-wing cable news figure, it's not exactly surprising. Forgot this fool was on Fox News, of course. Perhaps most dangerous of all, Hegseth reportedly lies about military realities, including to the president. Now this, she's making the allegation, allegedly, that Hegseth is covering Trump's eyes and not telling him the truth about the full extent of the nonsense and foolishness that's happening right now. Quote, Pete is not speaking truth to the president. As a result, the president is out there repeating misleading information, one administration official told the Washington Post. Hegseth claimed at a news conference last month that Iran's missile and drone programs were being, quote, overwhelmingly destroyed. Lies. But more trustworthy sources, like the U.S. intelligence assessment reported by CNN, say otherwise. He also regularly misleads citizens through his preening news conferences and public statements. Trump's recent unhinged threat to eradicate, quote, a whole civilization was a terrific negotiating tactic, Hegseth tried to tell reporters last week. He was telling people that this was fine. This was a threatening to wipe a civilization out was a negotiating tactic. Listen, I almost cussed. Quote, that type of threat is what brought them to the place where they effectively said, okay, we want to cut this deal, he said. Problem is, it's not true. Quite the opposite. Of course it's not true. Of course it's not true. Let's continue. There's nothing in Hegseth's background to suggest he could effectively oversee America's huge military operation with its almost 3 million employees and its $1 trillion budget, especially in wartime. Like, honestly, what is this man's background? He was an infantry officer in the Army National Guard. So you are an infantry officer in the Army National Guard. You get on Fox News and run your mouth, and all of a sudden you are the Secretary of War, aka the Secretary of Defense. I've never seen the amount of wild stuff going on right now. He was an infantry officer in the Army National Guard deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, but that hardly measures up to the usual credentials of the Pentagon's top leader. Senator Mark Kelly, the Arizona Democrat, a retired Navy captain who flew dozens of combat missions during the 1991 Gulf War before becoming an astronaut, has called him totally unqualified. Senator Mark Kelly has called him totally unqualified. Mark Kelly is an Arizona Dem and a retired Navy captain who flew dozens of combat missions. So you have people who know what they're talking about, who know how this works, who have some type of patience, who have critical and analytical thinking skills, saying that Pete Hegseth is totally unqualified for the position Trump has put him in. And maybe that's why he looks wild and stupid right now. Trump can't pick good people. I don't think he knows how. I think he's determined to surround himself by a bunch of sycophants, by a bunch of people that are going to tell him everything he wants to hear. And Pete Hegseth is one of those people. I still feel like I haven't gotten everything off my chest about this current situation, but let's wrap it up here. Thank you guys for listening. I guess wherever I post this, you can leave your responses under the comments. You will be respectful or your comment will not be seen. I'm gonna let you know right now, I don't play when it comes to calling people out their names, when it comes to acting a damn fool. This is a place of grown people and maturity. Let's keep it that way. Talk to you guys soon.